Single dad gave up his seat for a woman. Moments later, a billionaire changed his fate. The morning Marcus Reed boarded the 6:47 subway train, he had exactly $11 in his wallet, a crumpled rejection letter folded in his jacket pocket, and a photograph of his 7-year-old daughter tucked against his heart. He had not slept in 31 hours. He had not eaten since the day before. And somewhere between the exhaustion and the hunger and the quiet devastation of another door closing in his face, he had made a private peace with the idea that maybe some people were simply not meant to catch a break. He stood near the center pole, gripping the cold metal bar, swaying with the rhythm of the train, telling himself that he would figure it out, because he always did, because he had to, because Sophie was waiting for him at her grandmother's house and she still believed her father was the strongest man in the world. If you believe in kindness and second chances, this story is for you. Please like this video, drop a comment below, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Corner, because stories like this one deserve to be heard. Marcus had been a structural engineer once, the kind of man who built things meant to last. Then the company downsized, his wife left, the bills stacked up like condemned floors in an old building, and suddenly the man who knew how to hold structures together could not hold his own life from crumbling. For 14 months he had been fighting back, sending applications, attending interviews in his one good jacket, taking odd jobs on weekends to keep Sophie's school fees paid and the small apartment heated. He never complained in front of his daughter. He read her bedtime stories in funny voices and made pancakes shaped like animals on Sunday mornings and told her the future was bright, even on the nights he sat alone in the kitchen staring at final notices and trying not to fall apart. That morning on the train, he looked up and noticed her, a woman standing a few feet away, clutching a large canvas bag, visibly pregnant, her face pale and drawn with the kind of exhaustion that came not just from the weight she carried but from something deeper, something worn. There were no seats available. People around her scrolled through their phones, stared at their shoes, looked through her the way city crowds learn to look through anyone who needs something. Marcus hesitated for only a moment. Then, without a word, he crossed the aisle, gently touched her elbow, and gestured to his seat. She looked at him with wide, startled eyes, as though she had not expected it, as though simple kindness had become something rare enough to surprise her. He smiled, shook his head when she tried to thank him, and returned to the pole. He did not notice the man watching from the corner of the car. The man was unremarkable in appearance, gray overcoat, no tie, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, a leather satchel resting against his knee. He looked like any other commuter, the kind of quiet, settled presence that fades into the background of a crowded train. But Daniel Holt had not faded into any background for the better part of 2 decades. He had built 3 companies from nothing, lost one, rebuilt from the wreckage of that loss, and in doing so had developed the peculiar and precise ability to read people the way others read balance sheets. He had spent the last 6 months looking for something specific, not an employee, not a contractor, but a project manager for the community infrastructure initiative his foundation was launching in the city's most underfunded neighborhoods. Someone who understood structures. Someone who understood people. Someone who, when the moment quietly asked something of them, simply gave it without performing generosity for an audience. He had watched Marcus give up his seat. He had watched him do it with no hesitation, no announcement, no glance around to see who noticed. And something in the older man's chest had shifted in the way it only shifted when he recognized something genuine. When the train slowed at 34th Street, Daniel Holt stood, reached into his satchel, pulled out a business card, and walked the length of the car. Marcus was staring out the dark window, lost in calculations he was always running, how many days until rent, how many shifts to cover groceries, whether Sophie's winter coat would hold out another season. He felt the tap on his shoulder and turned. The man in the gray overcoat held out the card with 2 hands, the old-fashioned way, with a quiet kind of deliberate respect. He said only that he had seen what Marcus did, that he ran a foundation, and that he had a feeling they should talk. Then the doors opened and the man stepped off and was gone before Marcus could fully process what had happened. He stood there holding the card long after the train pulled away. The name meant nothing to him immediately. He was not the kind of man who followed business news or recognized the faces on financial magazine covers. He simply stared at the embossed letters and felt something he had almost forgotten the shape of, the cautious, fragile flutter of possibility. He almost did not call. That is the part of the story that matters most, the part that almost erased everything that followed. He told himself it was a mistake, a misunderstanding, perhaps some kind of mistake in the card. He set it on the kitchen counter and walked past it for 2 days, picking up Sophie from school, warming soup, reading her stories, folding laundry, doing all the quiet unremarkable labor of a man who loves his child more than he loves his own comfort or pride. On the 3rd morning, Sophie picked the card up from the counter and asked who Daniel Holt was, and something about hearing his daughter's voice speak a stranger's name made the question feel less frightening. He called that afternoon, standing outside on the fire escape so Sophie would not hear the nervousness in his voice. The interview was not what he expected. There was no panel, no formal table, no sharp questions designed to expose weakness. Daniel Holt met him in a small office with mismatched chairs and hand-drawn maps on the walls, and they talked for 2 hours about buildings and communities and what it meant to construct something that served the people who actually lived inside it. Marcus found himself speaking with a fluency and passion he had buried under months of rejection, answering questions he had not been asked in years, remembering who he was before the world had spent so long telling him he was no longer needed. He was offered the position 4 days later. A salary that would cover not only rent but Sophie's school, the medical visit she had been postponing, the coat she needed and the books she wanted and the small dignities that poverty quietly strips away. He sat in his car in the parking garage after the meeting and cried in a way he had not allowed himself to cry in a very long time, not from sadness but from the overwhelming, almost unbearable relief of being seen. He never forgot that the whole extraordinary chain of events had begun with an empty seat and a woman who needed it and the simple decision to give what he had without counting the cost. If this story moved something in you, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted, that being a good person in a hard moment still matters, please like this video, leave a comment telling us about a time someone's small kindness changed your day, and share this with someone who needs to believe that good things still find good people. Subscribe to Kindness Corner and never miss a story worth feeling, ***. Drop a comment below that says, kindness finds its way back, if this story touched your heart. The world does not always reward goodness loudly or immediately. Sometimes the return is quiet, arriving on an ordinary train on an ordinary morning, carried by a stranger in a gray coat who was simply paying attention. Marcus Reed learned that the moments we think no one is watching are often the most important moments of all, because someone always is, and sometimes, that someone has the power to change everything.